Welcome back to the channel and the next video in the series on the Boss BR1600 recorder. In this video we'll take a look at how to connect various audio sources and how to do some basic recording. Creating a new song is done from the utility menu under Song and New. You have 8 options for how to configure a new song. You can create a song with standard audio tracks or to use the built-in drums, bass and loops, or any combination of all of them. We'll look at the rhythm section and loops in future videos, but for now we'll just go with the 16 audio track option. Press go and a new song is created. The song is given a default name of song followed by a 3-digit number which increases each time you create a song. If you want to edit the name, you do that from the utility menu under Song and Name. Use the cursor and time value wheel to edit the text and press exit when you're done. Now, even though we've chosen the 16 audio track option for the song, you can change that at any time by pressing the track type button and enabling the drum patterns, bass patterns or loops. You do this by pressing the function key below the track types to cycle through the options. The choices other than audio tracks are loop phrases, bass, drums and metronome. This is useful especially if you want to use the built-in rhythm as a guide initially and swap over to audio tracks after. You don't lose any of the rhythm patterns or arrangements that you've created, so you can swap back and forth between them as much as you like. Before we connect an audio source, we need to look at how we're going to monitor the signal while we record. You can do this either with a set of headphones plugged into one of the 2 dedicated headphone jacks on the front, or you can connect a set of powered monitors. These can either be from the RCA line out or from the digital out with a coax cable if the monitors support a digital connection. According to the slogan on the box, the BR1600 is the easy way to record your band. With that in mind, it's been designed so that specific instruments are assigned to specific inputs. This allows the BR1600 to apply an appropriate bank of effects automatically. Now, if you don't plan to use any of the onboard effects, then you can go ahead and use any available input for any instrument and it will work just fine. For this video, we'll stick with Boss's recommended connections so that we can use the effects banks as intended. You can connect a guitar or bass to either the input 1 jack at the rear or to the instrument input on the front, both of which share the same internal circuitry. Just be aware that anytime you plug into the jack at the front, the rear input will be disabled. A microphone for vocals should be connected to input 2. You can either use the 1/4" jack or the XLR connection if the mic needs phantom power. To turn phantom power on, you enable it from the menu by going into Utility, System and Phantom. Highlight Phantom and use the time value wheel to turn it on. Phantom power is off by default, so you'll need to turn it on each time you start the recorder if you need it. If you plan on recording a guitar and vocal track at the same time and intend to use a microphone for the guitar, you should plug that into input 1 at the rear. Make sure that nothing is plugged into the instrument input on the front, otherwise the rear input will be disabled. If you are using multiple instrument mics, for instance to record a drum kit, then you can connect up to 8 at once using any combination of the 1/4" or XLR connections. Just remember to enable phantom power if any of the mics require it. You can connect other sources for recording using either 1 or 2 tracks, depending on if the source is stereo or not. This could be a keyboard, a CD player, MP3 player, a drum machine, or even a phone if it has a headphone jack or a way to output a signal over a cable. You can use any of the 8 inputs, but in the case of a stereo source, the pairs should be set to track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, 8. Only these single track pairs can be stereo linked, which is important later if you want to use a stereo compressor or any other stereo effect. You can also set up a stereo source as a submix. This can be used as a reference to play along to, and because the signal is routed directly to the BR1600's output, it won't be recorded. To set this up, you plug the source into input 7 and 8 and enable the option from the menu by going into Utility, System and Submixer. Set it to on using the time value wheel. The submix function is off by default, so you'll need to activate it each time you start the BR1600. As well as the analog quarter-inch and XLR connections, the BR1600 also has a digital input. This is in the form of SPDIF via a coaxial cable. Digital sources could include a CD player, drum machine, multi-effects pedal like the Boss GT10, as well as audio from a PC or any other input source that has a digital output conforming to a 44.1, 16 or 24-bit signal. To enable the digital input, you need to go into the Utility, System, and Digital in Assign. Set it to input using the time value wheel. The other digital option is Submix, which is similar to the analog submix function that we just looked at, in that it routes the audio directly to the BR1600's output. Again, this is useful if you want to play along to a reference without the need to record it. The BR1600 has 5 options for input source. These are guitar, vocal, guitar plus vocal, multi-track and stereo tracks. Guitar is for recording an electric guitar or bass. Vocal is for recording a single vocal microphone, and simultaneous is for recording a guitar and vocal at the same time. Now, even if you're using a mono source, such as a microphone, the BR1600 has a number of effects that can produce a stereo output. For this reason, all 3 of these input types can be recorded to either mono or stereo tracks. Multitracks is for recording up to 8 inputs at the same time. Each of the inputs is routed to the corresponding track. So input 1 is recorded to track 1, input 2 is recorded to track 2, and so on. In the case of using stereo tracks 9, 10 through 15, 16, input 1 and 2 goes to track 9, 10, input 3 and 4 will go to track 11, 12, and so on. Make sure that if you use this option that you disarm any of the tracks that you don't need, as all 8 are armed by default and you could end up recording silence over your already recorded tracks. Stereo tracks is for recording up to 4 stereo pairs of inputs, which are then mixed down to either a mono or stereo track. The input sensitivity dials control the input volume of the instruments. For this video, I'll demonstrate how to adjust it using a guitar, but the procedure is the same for all the input types. You need to play your instrument and watch the peak light next to the input. When you play at the level that you want to record at, the peak light should only come on occasionally. Turn up the sensitivity if the peak light doesn't come on, or down if it's on constantly. The peak light represents an input signal of -6 dB, with the idea being that this should give you enough headroom so that the signal won't go over 0 dB and cause clipping or distortion. When multiple inputs are used and stereo or multitrack is selected as a source, the volume balance between the tracks can be adjusted automatically using the level calibration. Press the level calibration button and it takes you to the calibration screen showing a play instruments prompt. You should play each instrument for 1 to 2 seconds at the volume you are going to record at. You can do this either individually or on all inputs at once. Press the calculate button to set the levels. If you'd rather set them manually, you can press the F3 manual button and use the value dials. A level of 100 is the same as the input signal unchanged. A level of 127 is 6 dB higher or twice as loud as the input signal. You can reset all the values to default by using the F2 reset button. It's also good practice when using the stereo tracks to mute any of the unused tracks, as they can introduce a small amount of noise even if the faders are set to 0. Level calibration is reset whenever the BR1600 is powered off. Each time a source input is selected, the input effects are turned on automatically and an appropriate bank of effects are selected. A guitar source turns on the guitar effects. The vocal source turns on vocal effects. Stereo tracks enables a chain of stereo effects. And multitrack enables effects tailored to specific instruments, which you can find listed in the Insert Effects patch list that comes with the BR1600. You can download this from the Boss website if you don't have a copy, and I'll leave a link in the description. If you don't want to use the onboard effects, just press the effects button twice until the effects light turns off. For this video, I'll demonstrate using a guitar input. The guitar effects are now switched on, and pushing the effects button takes you to the effects screen and the pre-selected bank of guitar effects. I'll cover insert effects in more detail in a future video, but for now I'll use one of the presets to demonstrate. If you do use the insert effects, you should select and adjust these before setting the recording levels, because the level control will only adjust the volume after it has passed through the insert effects. The level at which the audio is recorded to the track is set using the input level control, and the current level of the source is shown on the input section of the screen. The display also switches to show whether you are using 1 or 2 tracks. Adjust the level so that the signal peaks at around -4 at its loudest level. In the case of stereo or multi-track inputs, all the levels are adjusted simultaneously so that it can maintain the balance between the tracks. Unless you're recording a whole band in a live setting, then you should use a click track or rhythm guide to record to. As well as keeping you in time, the advantage of doing this is that the recording is then locked to measures on the BR1600. This makes it much easier later if you need to edit your song or move audio around, and be able to do it in relation to bars and beats rather than arbitrary time measurements. To set up a guide, you need to press the Track Type button. This takes you to the same options you set when creating a new song. You can either highlight track 15 and 16 using the cursor keys and change it with the time value wheel, or press the F4 button. You have 2 options to choose from. You can either use a metronome or one of the drum patterns to play along to. We'll look at the metronome first. Once selected, you'll see an icon appear in the top right-hand corner of the screen, indicating that the metronome is now active. To be able to hear it, you need to make sure that the track 15-16 fader is raised and press the track arm button. There are 4 options for how it behaves, and it cycles through these each time you press it. If the track arm button is flashing green, then it will be active during playback and recording. Solid green will play the metronome even when it's in stop mode. Unlit is the metronome off. Flashing red means that it will only be active during recording. It's important to note that the sound of the metronome is routed directly to the output, so it cannot be recorded or bounced to any of the tracks. You have a couple of options on how you can route the metronome for monitoring, which you can access from the utility menu under System and Metronome. Phones 1 is linked to the output of the BR1600, so the off option turns the output of the metronome off for both headphone 1 and line out. On is for outputting the metronome to headphone 1, line out, and combining it with all the other audio signals. Metronome only sends just the metronome to headphone 1 and line out. Phones 2 has the same options but doesn't affect the output of the BR1600, so you only control if the metronome is either on, off, or soloed on headphones 2. Both of the headphones are set to on by default. You have two options for the sound of the metronome, which you can access from the rhythm edit screen. Make sure that the arrangement light is off and press edit. Use the cursor to highlight the metronome options and change with the time value wheel, or use value dial 4. You can use either a beep or a click. To use a drum pattern to play along with, you need to set the track type option to drums. You also need to make sure that the programmable rhythm is set to pattern mode with the light off. Pattern mode means that a single drum pattern will play on repeat, while in arrangement mode, multiple patterns can be played together in a sequence. We'll look at the rhythm section in more detail in a future video. To be able to hear the drums, you need to make sure that the track 15/16 fader is raised and press the arm button. You have three options for playing the drum patterns. Flashing means that the drums will only sound during recording and playback. When solid, the drums will play even in stop mode, and unlit, the drums are set to off. To select a drum pattern, press the rhythm edit button and use the cursor to highlight the drum pattern number. With the drums playing, use the time value wheel to audition one of the patterns. A new pattern will only play once the current pattern has finished. Use value dial 4 to make large jumps when scrolling through the 600 preset patterns. You can change the default drum sounds from the rhythm edit menu using the F1 setup key. Highlight drum kit and scroll through the 9 available options. You press exit to go back to the home screen. The default time signature for a new song is 4/4. If you want to change this, you can do it from the rhythm edit menu. Press the F1 setup button, highlight the beat option and choose a new time signature. There are two ways you can set the tempo for a song. You can do it using either the tap tempo button and tapping 4 times, manually from the rhythm edit screen with the cursor and time value wheel, or value dial 1. There is also a way to set up a variable tempo that changes throughout the song, but we'll look at how to do that in a separate video. All audio files and audio edits are stored in a temporary folder on the BR1600 until you save the song. If the BR1600 is shut down without saving, all the recorded and edited audio added or modified since the last save will be lost. To save a song, you go to Utility, Song, and Store. A confirmation dialog pops up and you can confirm and then save. If the BR1600 detects that anything has changed on a song when you go to shut down, it will ask if you want to save before proceeding. The quickest way to save though is to use the shortcut, which is by pressing the stop and record buttons while the BR1600 is in stop mode. This will also bring up the same save dialog box. It's a good idea to get into the habit of saving often. This will keep you from losing any of your work if you have an unexpected power failure or a situation where you can't shut down cleanly and don't get the option to save. First, let's pick a drum pattern to play along to. Make sure you're in pattern mode and press Edit. Highlight the drum pattern number and press the track 1516 arm button until you can hear the drums. Scroll through the patterns and pick one to play along to. Set the tempo using the tap tempo button and adjust with the time value wheel. Press the Setup button to change the sound of the drums. Highlight Drum Kit and scroll through the available choices. Press the track 15 and 16 arm button until it flashes. The drums will now only sound during recording and playback. We'll record a guitar part for the first track and connect to the instrument jack on the front. Now we'll set the input sensitivity. Choose an insert effect. Set the input level to around -4. Choose a track to record to. Any tracks that are flashing red are armed. We'll use a mono track for the first one. Make sure we're in input mode. 0 takes you back to the start of the song. Press record and that puts you into standby mode and the button flashes red. When you press the play button, the selected track buttons, record button and play button will all turn red and it will start recording. Just press stop when you're finished. Once a track has been recorded, the track button will turn green. Press 0 to rewind back to the start of the song. Let's listen to the first track. Recording a new track while listening to previously recorded tracks is called overdubbing. We'll double the guitar for the second track, but before we do that, we'll pan the first track over to the far left to make it easier to hear the new part as we play. Press pan, press the track number and left. Let's use a different effect for the second guitar. Double check that the input level is still okay, as it can need adjusting if you change insert effects. Arm an empty track, one that's not lit green. Press 0 and record, and play to start overdubbing. Let's pan the second track over to the far right to mirror the first. Press pan, track 2 and right. Now we can listen back to both tracks. Next we'll add some bass. I'll swap the cable out from the guitar, but still use the instrument input on the front. And pick a bass preset. The bass presets are from 86 to 120. There's also some bass simulation presets that you can use with a standard guitar if you don't have a bass available. You'll find these from preset 76 to 80. Recheck the input sensitivity. Set the input level to -4 dB. Arm a new mono track, press 0 and record. Let's listen to what we have so far. For the next track, let's mic up an acoustic guitar. We'll plug the XLR cable into input 1 at the rear. I'll be using an Audio-Technica AT2020 condenser microphone, so we'll need to enable phantom power. Go into Utility, System and Phantom and switch it on. And set the input level to around -4. When recording with a microphone, you should do the monitoring using headphones so that you don't get any of the previously recorded tracks bleeding into the microphone signal. Plug your headphones into one of the 2 headphone jacks at the front and adjust the volume so that it's comfortable to play along to. Arm another empty track and press 0 and record. I want to pan this one over to the far left. Press pan, track 4 and left. Let's listen to the new track along with the previous ones. I'll double this with a second acoustic guitar, which we'll put over to the right. Now, rather than adjusting the pan after the recording, you can also do it before. Go to pan and press the left arrow button. That takes you to the pan controls for the inputs, and then press right. The BR1600 will copy the pan settings directly from here to the track playback, so it will sound exactly the same as it was recorded when we play it back. Arm an empty track, press 0 and record. Here are all the tracks we have so far. Let's add a guitar solo to finish off. This time we'll use the Boss GT10 connected using the digital input. Plug a coaxial cable from the digital out to the digital in on the rear of the BR1600 and enable it by going into Utility, System and Digital in Assign. Set to input. The input routing of the digital signal is controlled by the input selection buttons. Selecting either guitar or vocal will use inputs 1 or 2 respectively, and the tracks will be recorded in mono. Choosing the stereo or multi-track inputs will use input 1 and 2, and the corresponding physical inputs will be disabled as long as digital in assign is set to on. I want to record in stereo from the GT10, so I'm going to choose stereo tracks as the input source. The insert effects turn on by default, so we need to turn those off. Adjust the recording level to -4. The input sensitivity controls have no effect on a digital signal, so any adjustment in volume needs to be done from the connected unit itself. Arm an empty stereo track or stereo pair, press 0 and record. For recording alternate takes, you can switch to a different V track on the same physical track. That way you can swap between the takes while playing directly from the V track screen. It also makes it easier to comp a final track from multiple takes, which we'll look at doing in another video. You can find more information on exactly how V-tracks work in the previous video that I did on the subject. When recording, just remember to leave at least one stereo track free so that you can bounce all the tracks down to a stereo mix for either mastering or for freeing up space to record some more tracks. We'll be looking at how to bounce tracks in the next video. So here's the final result of our 6-track basic recording. Well, that covers the basics of how you record and overdub on the BR1600. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.